T.J. O'Rourke is here. He travels around the world for Rolling Stone magazine and writes about the things and places that he visits. He has written a number of books, including Give War a Chance in 1992, Parliament of Whores in 1991, Holidays in Hell 1988, Republican Party Reptile 1987, The Bachelor Home Companion 1987, Modern Manners 1983. The new book is, I said, All the Trouble in the World, the lighter side of overpopulation and famine, ecological disaster, ethnic hatred, plague, and poverty. They have a lighter side.
It doesn't sound like a bowl of chuckles, does it?
It certainly doesn't, sir.
Well,
first of all, welcome to my humble home.
Thank you. I like this. I like the new joint.
Yeah. That's right.
The viewing audience should see the tropical fish outside. It's pretty amazing.
Yes.
Is that a sushi feature, or are they for decoration?
No. They're for color admiration and for those of you who haven't visited Bloomberg, this is a trademark here. Tropical fish, and gosh, they're pretty.
I wish you'd told me that before I ate three of them.
See, you were one of those frat boys with goldfish, weren't you?
I wasn't. I was a hippie. I look like a frat boy, not an aging frat boy.
Yeah.
No, but it's entirely an affectation. I was actually one of these kids, with a ponytail and a jean jacket and a big red fist.
So what happened to you then, sir?
I got a job. I got a haircut and I got a job, just like they told me I should.
Yeah. Where did this, there's nobody that I know who doesn't read you and smile and laugh and think you're an enormously gifted writer. Where did it come from? I mean, you had this sort of interesting degree, Woodrow Wilson Fellowship, to attend the writing seminaries at Johns Hopkins University, all of that. I mean, are you born with a sense of humor, you think?
Well, I think
or to look at things humorously?
I think there's a knack in that, but I think really it comes from a large, wise Irish family. Everybody in my family is very funny. Most of them intentionally, and the rest are still pretty funny. Yeah. So I think it's that.
So dinner is a hoot.
Well, it kind of depends upon. It can be more than a hoot sometimes. Yeah.
It could be a fight.
First third's good. Second third is.
But by dessert.
Interesting, yes, and the last third is when you call 911. But yeah, I came from a large wisecracking family, and I do think it's a little bit of a knack because I started out to be a very serious writer. I wanted to write truly incomprehensible poetry and truly incomprehensible fiction, and I may say I was quite successful at being incomprehensible. I mean, not at writing fiction or poetry. But I would to make a living or to get by, I would write little journalistic pieces, a lot of reviews and so on, and they tended to be in the voice of my family, I guess, more or less. And it became clear that people liked reading those things and did not like reading my artistic output. And it was just a case of an old comedian friend of mine once told me, if somebody calls you a horse's often enough, saddle up and ride out of town.
So they said what did they said this is a humor writer or a satirical writer?
Wants to be or not.
All right. So you said an interesting thing once about comparing yourself with Hunter Thompson. Hunter Thompson is a guy with a slanted vision.
Oh, a singular vision.
A singular vision who looks at ordinary events, the gathering of conventions in Los Angeles or a presidential campaign.
Presidential campaign being probably the most famous example.
Yeah.
I mean, he started out writing about the Hells Angels, but that's actually Hunter's calmest, most repertorial writing. His craziest writing is about stuff like going to a police convention in Las Vegas, and I don't think he ever even sees a policeman. I mean, it's all about getting there and getting in the hotel room and bats nailed to the ceiling and stuff. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Fear and Loathing on the campaign trail, there's nothing in it really more interesting than average U.S. presidential campaign. We all know about how interesting that is. But Hunter brings this genius vision to his writing, and he's often writing about rather prosaic events. Whereas I think of myself as basically being just the opposite, bringing a very ordinary vision.
Middle-class vision and values.
Regular Toledo, Ohio, a sort of
two
very weird events. In this case...
That's right. That gets me to this.
Horrifying stuff.
Now, overpopulation. What's
funny about that?
Yeah.
Well, that's... Actually, let me answer the overall question first, which is what's funny about any of this stuff.
That's right. All the trouble in the world. All the trouble in the world.
Funny about this.
Right.
And I'm not out to poke fun at people dying from these various things. But I am out to poke angry fun to make vicious mockery of the kind of bad thinking that gets us into these situations, and the kind of bad thinking that poses as a solution for these problems when it isn't really one, and the kind of demagoguery that often goes with scaring people about these problems, especially if somebody's got some other purpose in mind when they set out to do their sort of Chicken Little act. So what I am angry at is not by any means the victims of the problems, nor the problems themselves, really, but the stupid stuff that goes on around the problems.
Yeah. Take ecological disaster.
It's a problem. Man damages the environment, there's no doubt about it. But in the process of damaging the environment, we are also getting a lot of good things out of that environment. The environment is damaged as a byproduct of the industrial civilization, which has given us the wealth and the luxury to allow us to sit back and say the environment is being destroyed.
Yes.
I mean, when people actually spend a lot of time outdoors, hunting and gathering and farming and pillaging in armed bands or whatever they were doing out there, they didn't have time to romanticize the outdoors. Yeah. They weren't in love with the outdoors. They didn't think the outdoors was cute. They wouldn't have cried at Bambi. They would have said, Bambi's mother shot by hunters? Good, the hunters will have something to eat.
Yes.
They had a very different attitude than we do. So we have to realize that this is a trade-off. Now, we want to make an intelligent trade-off. We won't want to despoil the planet just so that we can have more toaster ovens. Right. On the other hand, we don't want to lose our toaster ovens just so that 1 square inch of desert someplace isn't paved or something. And we have to make an intelligent, and we have to face these as ordinary problems. Ecological problems are ordinary problems like any other problem, and there's no need to get hysterical about it. There's no need to turn this into a religious cause, turn this,
But what's your brief against Vice President Gore?
Oh, I have so much fun with Gore.
Well, you do. I mean,
repeatedly attack him, and I'll tell you why. It's really very unfair.
It is.
I didn't set out to attack Gore.
You just got carried away, didn't you?
I just got carried away.
And the poor guy's on crutches now, and I just
what's the matter?
Well, he injured himself playing basketball.
Stumbled over one of his ideas.
Yeah, sort of.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is being mean.
Or somebody tripped him up at the Senate.
I read, as part of my research for this book, I read Earth in the Balance.
Yeah.
And I found it to be simply the worst book I'd ever managed to get all the way through.
This is a man who is a United States Senator.
This does not make him a good writer.
It's like the son of a United States Senator. He went to Harvard. He is Vice President of the United States, and he cares deeply about the environment, and he spent a number of years writing this book. Many hours he was up late at night writing this book.
And it shows.
And you have disparaged this effort.
None of these things. I'm sure he's a wonderful guy. He's certainly taller than I am. He's better educated than I am, and doubtless he's smarter than I am. This does not make him right.
Or a good writer.
Or a good writer. No, it's not very well written. But I will give it this. Most politicians' books are ghost-written. His book is clearly not ghost-written. Clearly not ghost-written, because a ghostwriter would have cleaned the thing up and made it, more readable.
Yeah.
But no, but I mean, the guy put a lot of work into this. However, it is a credulous book. It takes in pretty much every ecological scare that has ever been put forward and just repeats it word for word.
From the ozone in the atmosphere to whatever.
To fringe-toed newts, whatever. Right. I mean, it's all in there. And it is also, it repeatedly makes the logical error of what is called begging the question. Gore is supposed to be proving to us here that we have a terrible ecological crisis in the world, and therefore we have to do something about it, presumably elect him vice president, or maybe even president later on. In fact, what the book does is says over and over again things like, this terrible ecological crisis we're suffering. And this is called begging the question. This is when you assume in your argument as true what is to be proven true by the argument. And this is where the book offended me. But the real reason I attack Gore so often is that every time I needed an example of something stupid about overpopulation,
there it was.
It was right there. I could have gone to the library and gone through volumes and volumes in the periodical index and gone and gotten the magazine and found that magazine had been stolen by somebody and so on and so forth to get quotes by other silly people. But here I had this some 300 and some page paperback book, inexpensive, right there on my table with an index, so I could just pick the thing up, and I say, I need something stupid about global warming. I pick it up, and it'd be global warming. It'd be this page, that page, that page, all right in front of me.
You say from the book, Earth in the Balance is really just a compendium of all the ecological frets and dreads that have been accumulating in our minds since the days when James Thurber's grandmother worried about electricity leaking out of empty light bulb sockets.
One of my favorites, Thurber being a fellow Ohioan and having apparently the same sort of relatives that I did. I could picture that in a minute. I think my grandmother was a little.
Now, what about famine? You say famine is too close to die, and we snap at our spouse, jiggle on the scale, and finish other people's cheesecake. If we turned into angry, lying thieves by mere forgiving of dessert, what must real hunger be like? Imagine a weight loss program at the end of which, instead of better health, good looks, and hot romantic prospects,
you die.
You die.
I was pointing out there why it is that we have such a visceral gut reaction. I mean, first, of course, the first reason we have such a reaction to famine is compassion.
Yeah,
I mean,
and especially for children.
Oh, of course, And yet, I worry about this sometimes because there was recently a South African photographer, since committed suicide,
right,
took a Pulitzer Prize-winning photograph of a Sudanese toddler with a vulture in the background. I'm sure many of your viewers will have seen that photograph. I think it appeared in Time. I know it appeared in a lot of newspapers. I was reading there was an obit of him, and I'm reading about this man, and it turns out that he spent 20 minutes setting up his camera and reflectors or whatever it was that he needed. So just to get that photograph just right, leaving that little girl out there in the desert with a vulture behind her for 20 minutes while he set this up. And when he had taken the photograph, he walked away, and he had no idea what had happened to that girl. And I would have liked to have brought the guy back to life right then, so I could have strangled him with my bare hands.
Yeah.
I mean, go kick the bird out of the way, grab the kid, take her to someplace where she can get some
And
food.
the hell with the photograph.
Hell with the photograph. Who cares about the photograph? So our compassion is real, but let us understand that it's sometimes being manipulated in fairly ugly ways. And the other thing is that, of course, we are familiar with being hungry. Not because we're poor, but because we're too rich and we're too fat and we're always trying to lose weight. Not you, maybe, but the rest of us. And so we know what being hungry is like, even though it's like joke hunger.
Right.
I mean, it's not real hunger, but we know it hurts. So we don't know what being shot in the head because we're a Serb is like, or a Croatian. But we do know what being hungry is like. So this one really gets us. It's a visceral feeling we have about. But the shock for me, all this said, was I went to Somalia. I went in with the American troops to Somalia to the relief effort there and found that Somalia had lots of food. That the problem in Somalia, people were starving in Somalia. I'm not saying anybody was lying about that.
The problem in Somalia was the conflict over power.
Over power. People with guns were stealing the food from people who didn't have guns. It was simple as that. It wasn't a
Or the people
food.
with guns were preventing food from getting to other people because it was in their interest politically
to kill them.
Kill them.
Yeah, that was actually that latter paradigm, if that word hasn't been completely worn out, was actually more true, I believe, of Ethiopia than of Somalia. Somalia was more thievery, and Ethiopia was more calculating political. But yes, that's exactly what was going on.
Let me just turn to some other things. Tell me about what do you think? Ross Perot was here earlier because we're taping this following his visit because I extended a little bit. What do you think of Ross Perot?
I think he's a little cracked. I mean, he's just a sort of like peevish and he doesn't make an awful lot of sense to me. He made a lot of sense to me when he first came on the national scene because he's saying, everything's a mess.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's not hard to figure that out. Nonetheless, it was true, and no other presidential candidate, real or potential, was just putting it that. But, then what? There was never a then what with him. Well, we're going to clean it up. We're just going to use good, regular, common sense. Well, we all know that there's nothing common about, barnyard.
We're going to open up the hood and look in there.
Well, anybody who's opened up the hood of their car and looked in there knows they have the slightest idea how to fix it. And that's our national system has become that complicated, too. It just isn't that easy. You can't just go to Washington and clean it up.
But I think that the points that he raised in that campaign in the beginning, is really what is fueling this sense of anti-incumbency and disillusionment with Washington. It began there, and it's reaching its crescendo
right now.
Right now.
Right now. And, you know, if he had gone the next step, I would have loved to have seen somebody go the next step and say, look, let's be really honest. I want to be the first really honest political candidate in the history of mankind. There's not much I can do for you. You know, overall, in most of the things in your life, I can't fix them. Your marriage on the rocks, too bad. The government can't fix that. Your kids are acting up. Hey, I can't send the FBI over there and fix that.
But you're an anti-statist anyway, aren't you?
I am. I believe in the individual. I believe in that the most power possible should be reserved to the individual. I mean, most power consistent with some degree of public order and, you know, peace and quiet. You know, I'm against kids playing boom boxes loud under my window. But I think that's mainly what the government should be using. No, I mean, obviously, I'm not an anarchist or even a pure libertarian. We do have to have a social structure, and we do need an element of law and order. We need a legal system, and we need a governmental system. But I do believe in reserving power to the individual when it's at all possible.
Have any good things you can say about our president?
No. He's a better golfer than I am.
P.J. O'Rourke, all the trouble in the world, the lighter side of overpopulation, famine, ecological disaster, ethnic hatred, plague, and poverty. If there is something interesting to be said to put it in perspective, he can do it. Why don't you write movies and screenplays and things like that?
I don't like the people. They simply are not literate. I worked for a while writing screenplays. It pays well. It's not that the people were evil or mean.
If you hit the home run, I mean, you...
Oh, yeah, well, you never have to work again.
You buy your own country.
Then what would I be? You know, I mean, all on my... No, all on my own without working, I don't amount to much. I mean, work is what I do. Not that I amount to much when I do work. But I just... it was really dealing with the illiterates, people who in the movie industry simply don't care about words. The writer is the plumber. And this was, I think this is something Ben Hecht said. It was somebody asked him if he'd seen one of the movies he'd written a script for, and he said, look, he said, when the plumber comes over and installs a toilet at your house, does he come back to watch it work? And that's about how you're treated, you know.
Yeah.
The money's good,
no
but the
no
status,
interest.
no.
Not even.
Television, I mean, I like what you do. I'll take your job. But I don't want to write any movie scripts. Now I have to be taller.
And thin.
Thinner and taller, yeah.
Great to have you anytime.